My name is Chelsea, 32 years old, and I spent 2 years locked in my own basement because my husband wanted to start a new life with his mistress. Right now I'm standing outside the courthouse breathing free air while Marcus sits in handcuffs inside. The revenge I orchestrated during those 730 days of captivity is about to unfold completely. He thought he buried me alive, but he never realized I was documenting everything. Before I tell you how I destroyed the man who stole 2 years of my life, let me know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you believe karma always finds its way back. Trust me, what's coming will show you that sometimes the best revenge is served with legal papers and federal investigations. 8 years ago, I thought I had everything figured out. At 32, I was the youngest marketing director in my Fortune 500 company's history, pulling in $200,000 a year plus bonuses. Marcus seemed like the perfect match when we met at a charity gala in Manhattan. He worked as a senior investment banker at Whitmore and Associates, one of those firms where everyone wore $10,000 watches and competed over who had the better Hamptons house. Our wedding was featured in the Times. 400 guests at the Rainbow Room, my dress custom designed by Vera Wang herself. Marcus's speech that night made everyone cry. He called me his anchor, his better half, the woman who made him want to be worthy of love. Looking back now, I should have noticed how good he was at performing emotions he never actually felt. We bought a colonial house in Greenwich, Connecticut. 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a pool house that cost more than most people's actual homes. I loved the breakfast nook that faced east, catching the morning sun while I drank my coffee and reviewed marketing proposals. Marcus preferred his home office soundproofed and locked, where he conducted what I thought were confidential business calls. The changes started subtly about 3 years into our marriage. New cologne that smelled like sandalwood and something sharp. Gym sessions that went from 3 times a week to daily, sometimes twice. Business dinners that stretched past midnight with clients whose names he could never quite remember when I asked. I told myself successful marriages required trust. I told myself paranoia would poison what we had built. Then came Natalie. 23 years old, fresh from Wharton with an MBA and legs that went on forever. Marcus hired her as his executive assistant, singing her praises at every opportunity. She was brilliant, he said. Innovative. Exactly what his team needed to reach the next level. He started mentoring her, staying late to review her proposals, taking her to client meetings to give her exposure. I met her at the company Christmas party. She wore a red dress that cost more than her supposed entry-level salary should have afforded. When Marcus introduced us, her handshake was limp, her smile never reaching her eyes. She knew exactly who I was and what she planned to take from me. The way she touched Marcus's arm when she laughed, the inside jokes they shared, the synchronized way they checked their phones. Every wife knows that particular feeling in her gut when another woman wants her husband. The confrontation came on a Thursday. Marcus's secretary called me by accident, thinking I was Natalie confirming their weekend reservation at the St. Regis. 2 rooms she specified, but adjoining. For privacy during their strategic planning session, of course. I drove to his office that night and used my spare keycard. Found them in his office, her on his desk, his face buried between her thighs. He didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. Stood up, adjusted his tie, and said we needed to talk like adults. He was in love with Natalie. Had been for months. Our marriage had been over for years. He claimed we were just too comfortable to admit it. He wanted a divorce, clean and simple. He'd be generous with the settlement if I didn't make things difficult. I laughed. Actually laughed in his face. Told him I'd been documenting his suspicious behavior, had photos of them together, receipts for jewelry I never received. His firm had a morality clause, and infidelity with a subordinate would end his career. The partners at Whitmore were old-school conservative men who valued family appearances above everything. Marcus went pale, then red, then something else entirely. Cold, calculating. He suggested we go home and discuss this rationally. Said he had paperwork that might change my perspective on the financial arrangements. I should have recognized the trap. Should have seen how quickly his panic transformed into confidence. But I was angry, hurt. ready to fight for what I'd earned through 8 years of marriage. The wine tasted wrong, just slightly off like it had turned, but Marcus insisted it was a new vintage from his special collection. We sat in our living room, the one I'd decorated with careful attention to every detail, and he laid out spreadsheets showing our assets. My vision started blurring after the second glass. My words slurred. The last thing I remembered was Marcus catching me as I fell, whispering that he was sorry, but I'd left him no choice. I woke up in our basement. Not the unfinished storage area I remembered, but a converted prison. Reinforced door with multiple locks. Security cameras in every corner. A small bathroom with a toilet and sink. A twin bed bolted to the floor. No windows. The walls had been covered with additional soundproofing foam. A small slot at the bottom of the door for food delivery. Marcus appeared on a monitor mounted high on the wall, his face distorted by the camera angle. He explained everything with the same tone he used for quarterly reports. He needed time to restructure our assets, move money offshore, establish Natalie publicly as his partner. I was supposed to have disappeared, run off with someone I met online. He'd already sent emails from my account posted on my social media about needing to find myself. My resignation letter was submitted to my company. My family received messages saying I needed space. The planning must have taken months. The construction in our basement disguised as renovation after supposed water damage. The fake email accounts, the forged documents, the methodical erasure of my existence. While I was sleeping next to him, trusting him building our life together, he was architecting my disappearance. The first week I screamed until my throat bled, pounded on the door until my hands swelled purple and black. Marcus came twice a day with food, basic sandwiches and water, never speaking beyond necessary instructions. Put the tray by the door. Step back. Wait until I leave to eat. The cameras watched everything. When I tried to attack him on day 4, launching myself at the door when he opened it, he simply stepped back and let me fall into the hallway. Then he dragged me back inside and left me in darkness for 3 days. The footsteps above became my torture. Heels clicking on hardwood, Natalie's laugh echoing through the vents. My house, my kitchen, my bedroom, now occupied by a woman who probably used my expensive sheets and soaked in my custom marble bathtub. Sometimes I heard parties, recognized voices of our friends, people who thought I'd abandoned Marcus for some internet lover. Marcus started showing me things on the monitor. My Facebook filled with posts about finding myself in Costa Rica. Emails to my mother about needing to explore who I was outside of marriage. My sister received messages saying Marcus was controlling and I had to escape. Everyone believed I'd lost my mind, thrown away a perfect life for some midlife crisis. My best friend Sarah posted about hoping I'd find peace wherever I was. The escape attempts were pointless, but necessary for my sanity. I dismantled the bed frame, tried to use the metal to pry the door. Marcus replaced it with a mattress on the floor. I broke the cameras with thrown food trays. He left me in darkness for a week, no way to tell time passing except by counting meals. I tried flooding the bathroom, hoping water damage would require outside maintenance. The drainage system had been specifically designed to prevent that. After 3 months, Marcus became comfortable enough to talk during his visits. Told me about Natalie's promotion at his firm, how the partners loved her innovative ideas, which were actually my marketing strategies I'd shared over dinner conversations. He showed me photos from their trip to Paris, staying in the same hotel where we'd honeymooned. The calculated cruelty was worse than the imprisonment itself. I discovered the surveillance went back years. Hidden cameras throughout our house, keystroke loggers on my laptop, tracking devices in my car and phone. Every private moment, every personal conversation, every intimate detail of my life recorded and stored. He knew about my pregnancy scare before we married, the miscarriage I never told him about, the therapy sessions I attended secretly when his criticism became too much. The financial devastation was complete. Credit cards opened in my name, maxed out and defaulted. Loans I never took, destroying my credit score. My retirement accounts emptied through forged signatures. My car sold to a dealer in New Jersey. My grandmother's jewelry pawned except for the pieces Natalie now wore in the photos Marcus showed me. 6 months in, I heard Natalie's voice clearly through the vents, talking about redecorating. My carefully chosen furniture was apparently too traditional, too boring, not reflecting their dynamic modern relationship. The sound of demolition above my kitchen being gutted and rebuilt was like listening to my identity being physically destroyed piece by piece. Marcus's visits became irregular. Sometimes twice a day, sometimes nothing for 3 days. The hunger was manageable, but the uncertainty was torture. Was this the time he'd forget completely? Would I die here while he and Natalie played house above? The water in the bathroom sink became my lifeline, keeping me alive when food didn't come. I found a loose baseboard behind the toilet during month 7. Inside the small gap, I hid a journal made from food napkins, writing with a pen I'd stolen from Marcus's pocket during one of his careless moments. Documented everything. Dates, times, conversations, his admissions about the financial crimes. If I died here, maybe someday someone would find it. The psychological games escalated. Marcus started bringing baby magazines, leaving them with my food. Natalie was pregnant, he announced, something they'd been trying for months. The child I'd wanted, but he'd said we weren't ready for. He brought ultrasound photos, painted a nursery in what used to be my home office. Asked if I wanted to know the gender, laughing when I stayed silent. My body changed in ways I hadn't expected. Hair fell out in clumps from malnutrition and stress. My period stopped. Skin turned gray from lack of sunlight. Muscles atrophied despite my attempts at exercise in the small space. But my mind that stayed sharp. Sharper, maybe focused on one singular purpose. Survival first, then complete and total destruction of Marcus Pemberton. By the 1-year mark, Marcus had created an entire false medical history for me. Showed me psychiatric evaluations claiming severe bipolar disorder, borderline personality, narcissistic tendencies. Documents stating I'd been institutionalized twice in my 20s, complete with admission records and doctor signatures. If I ever escaped and tried to tell the truth, who would believe the crazy woman over the successful banker with the crying pregnant wife? The baby shower happened directly above my prison. Dozens of women cooing over tiny clothes and silver rattles, while I lay on a mattress below counting the voices I recognized. My book club friends, former colleagues, my own cousin Maria, who must have flown in from Seattle. The party lasted 4 hours. The silence afterward was somehow worse than the celebration. Natalie went into labor at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. I knew because Marcus was panicking above his footsteps, frantic as he gathered hospital bags. He forgot my food for 2 days. When he finally returned, he looked exhausted but euphoric. A son, 8 pounds 3 ounces, named James after Marcus's father. He actually showed me photos, the baby's tiny face red and wrinkled, Natalie looking radiant despite having just given birth. The argument started when James was 3 months old. Natalie's voice shrieking about Marcus never being home, always working, leaving her alone with a colicky baby. Marcus responding with cold logic about maintaining their lifestyle, paying for the house, supporting her spending habits. The fights grew longer, louder, more violent. Doors slamming, glass breaking. Once something heavy fell directly above me, and Natalie screamed that he was just like his father, a sociopath incapable of real emotion. Marcus began drinking heavily. I could smell whiskey on him during morning food deliveries. His hands shook. He'd lost weight, dark circles under his eyes suggesting insomnia. Sometimes he'd stare at me through the monitor for hours. Not speaking, just watching like he was trying to solve a problem he'd created but couldn't undo. I played broken. Stopped eating regularly, spoke in whispers when I spoke at all, spent hours lying motionless on the mattress. Let him see me crying, rocking, talking to invisible people. His relief was obvious. A crazy Chelsea was better than an angry one. A defeated prisoner required less vigilance than one still fighting. But every night I exercised in the blind spots I'd identified between cameras. Push-ups, sit-ups, yoga poses to maintain flexibility. I practiced holding my breath, extending the time longer and longer. Studied Marcus's patterns obsessively. Tuesday and Thursday he had partner meetings. Wednesday was his golf day. Weekends he spent with Natalie and James trying to play happy family. The foundation crack appeared during month 15, water seeping through the corner when it rained, suggesting structural damage. Marcus had to handle it himself, couldn't risk contractors discovering his prisoner. Watching him struggle with buckets and sealant cursing as water continued dripping, I realized the house itself was turning against him. I heard Gloria before I saw any sign of her. Natalie's mother visiting from Philadelphia to help with James. Her voice was sharp questioning, never satisfied with Marcus's vague answers about my disappearance. Where exactly did Chelsea go? Why hadn't she contacted anyone? How could someone just vanish from their entire life? Marcus's explanations grew increasingly elaborate and contradictory. Gloria had been a private investigator for 15 years before retiring. I learned this from her conversations with Natalie, her stories about tracking down missing persons, unraveling lies, following paper trails that guilty people thought they'd destroyed. She noticed things: the extra locks on the basement door, the grocery receipts for more food than 3 people needed, the way Marcus physically blocked any attempt to go downstairs. One afternoon, with Marcus at work and Natalie at her postpartum yoga class, Gloria stood directly above me. I could hear her footsteps, slow and deliberate, like she was examining every inch of flooring. Then she spoke, not to anyone upstairs, but in a clear, caring voice meant to travel through vents and cracks. She said she knew someone was down there. That help was coming. That whoever was listening should stay strong and document everything. The note appeared under my door 3 days later, slipped through the food slot while Marcus was at his weekly partners' dinner. Gloria's handwriting cramped but clear. She'd hired a current private investigator, someone who specialized in domestic imprisonment cases. They were building evidence. I needed to be ready. The plan required patience, but freedom was coming. Gloria's investigation was methodical. The PI discovered Marcus was still paying for my health insurance, listing me as residing at our home address. My cell phone account remained active, the bills auto-paid from our joint account. He'd been refilling my prescriptions at the local pharmacy, medications for anxiety and depression I'd never taken, but that supported his false narrative of mental illness. 18 months in, everything accelerated. Natalie's postpartum depression had evolved into full psychosis. I heard her threatening to hurt herself, maybe hurt James. Marcus trying to calm her, promising they'd get help, begging her not to do anything stupid. Gloria moved in temporarily, supposedly to help with the baby, but really to monitor the situation and protect her grandson. The breaking point came when Marcus forgot about me entirely for 3 days. Dealing with Natalie's breakdown, emergency psychiatric holds lawyers about custody arrangements. When he finally remembered and came downstairs, I was unconscious, severely dehydrated, my pulse barely detectable. His panic was real this time. If I died, he'd have a body to explain. The basement was registered to the house. Any investigation would uncover his prison. He started an IV drip stolen from his brother who worked at Mount Sinai. Brought electrolyte solutions, protein shakes, vitamin supplements. For the first time in over a year, he seemed to see me as human again, not just a problem to manage. Asked if I was okay, if I needed anything specific. The fear in his eyes was beautiful. Natalie found the passport first. My real passport, not the fake one Marcus had created showing stamps from Costa Rica and Thailand. Hidden in his home office safe along with my birth certificate, social security card, and the original copies of our marriage certificate. Documents proving I'd never left the country, never abandoned my life, never ran away with anyone. The confrontation between Natalie and Marcus happened at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday. She'd been searching for James's insurance papers when she found the safe combination written on a sticky note hidden under his desk drawer. Inside, she discovered not just my documents, but surveillance footage from our bedroom dated from years before I disappeared. Her screams woke the entire neighborhood. Gloria called the police while Natalie confronted Marcus. He tried to explain, to minimize, to claim I'd asked to be kept safe from myself. Natalie wasn't stupid. She knew about the basement door, had wondered why it needed so many locks, why Marcus got violent when she suggested converting it into a playroom for James. She grabbed his keys while Gloria kept him distracted arguing about lawyers and custody. The SWAT team arrived at dawn. The basement door exploded, inward splinters of wood flying everywhere, tactical lights blinding after nearly 2 years in artificial fluorescence, officers in full gear staring at what I'd become skeletal, filthy, barely human in appearance. One of them, a woman with kind brown eyes, wrapped me in a blanket and said the words I'd dreamed about for 730 days. "You're safe now. It's over." Outside, the sunrise was so bright it physically hurt. Neighbors stood on their lawns in bathrobes and slippers filming with their phones as I was carried on a stretcher to the ambulance. Mrs. Patterson from 2 houses down was crying. Bob from across the street kept saying he should have known, should have questioned why he never saw me anymore. The hospital was overwhelming. Too many people, too many sounds, too much space after living in a box for 2 years. The medical examination revealed compression fractures in my spine from sleeping on the floor. Severe vitamin D deficiency causing bone weakness. Muscle wasting that would require months of physical therapy. PTSD that would need years of treatment. But I was alive, free, and ready to destroy Marcus completely. The media explosion was immediate and relentless. Every major network wanted an exclusive. My photo, both before and after imprisonment, plastered across newspapers nationwide. The headline variations all said the same thing. Investment banker imprisons wife in basement for 2 years. Wall Street executive's dark secret. The house that hid a nightmare. Marcus's arrest at his Whitmore office was captured by dozens of cameras. His partners watched from the glass conference room as FBI agents led him away in handcuffs. His secretary later testified that he'd asked her to call his lawyer, then corrected himself and asked for lawyers plural. He knew what was coming. Financial crimes have no statute of limitations when fraud is ongoing. My parents flew in from Arizona immediately. My mother collapsed when she heard my voice on the phone, had to be sedated before boarding the plane. My father, a retired Marine who'd never cried in my presence, sobbed openly when he saw me in the hospital bed. They'd hired 3 different private investigators to find me, spent their entire retirement savings searching for their daughter, who everyone said had abandoned them. My sister Emma arrived from California with a team of lawyers she'd been assembling for months. Turns out she never believed Marcus's story, had been documenting inconsistencies, keeping records of every strange email and social media post. She'd contacted the FBI 6 months earlier, but without evidence of a crime, they couldn't investigate a woman who'd supposedly left voluntarily. The criminal charges were extensive: kidnapping, false imprisonment, aggravated assault, identity theft, wire fraud, mail fraud, tax evasion, each charge carrying potential decades in prison. The federal prosecutor, a woman named Jennifer Chen, who'd made her career taking down white-collar criminals, took the case personally. She assigned her best team to ensuring Marcus would never see freedom again. My journal, hidden behind the baseboard, became crucial evidence. 500 napkins covered in tiny handwriting, documenting every crime Marcus confessed to, every threat he made, every day of captivity. The forensic team called it the most detailed victim documentation they'd ever seen. I'd included dates, times, direct quotes, even descriptions of what he wore during significant conversations. The financial investigation uncovered more than anyone expected. Marcus had been stealing from client accounts for years, using my imprisonment to cover his tracks. He'd moved $16 million offshore, planning to disappear himself once he'd figured out how to dispose of my body. The FBI found searches on his computer for underwater concrete acid dissolution and remote burial sites. Catherine Walsh, my civil attorney, was 5 feet 2 inches of pure vengeance in Prada heels. Former prosecutor turned private practice, she'd won the largest domestic violence settlement in Connecticut history. When she read my journal, she actually smiled. Not a pleasant smile, but the expression of someone who knew they were about to destroy another human being legally and completely. The civil lawsuit demanded $40 million in compensatory damages and another 100 million in punitive damages, false imprisonment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, loss of earnings, loss of consortium, assault battery, and a dozen other torts I'd never heard of. Catherine also filed against Whitmore and Associates for negligent supervision, claiming they should have known Marcus was using company resources to facilitate crimes. The deposition was where Marcus finally broke. 7 hours of questioning under oath with video cameras recording every moment. Catherine systematically walked him through each day of my imprisonment, forcing him to admit to every crime, every cruelty, every calculated moment of torture. When she showed him photos of what I looked like when rescued, he actually vomited into a trash can. Natalie testified for the prosecution in exchange for immunity. Turned out she'd suspected something was wrong for months, but was too terrified to act. Marcus had been drugging her 2 small doses of benzodiazepines to keep her compliant and confused. She provided recordings she'd secretly made of Marcus discussing his plans to make my death look like suicide. Gloria became my unexpected ally and friend. She moved into a rental nearby, visiting daily with home-cooked meals and stories about her investigation days. She'd actually solved 3 cold cases involving domestic imprisonment, knew the psychology of captors, understood why women like me often blamed themselves initially. She testified that she'd heard me screaming through the vents that Marcus had threatened her when she tried to investigate. The trial became a national spectacle. Court TV provided wall-to-wall coverage. True crime podcasts dissected every detail. The courthouse steps were packed with protesters holding signs saying "Justice for Chelsea" and "Lock him up forever." Women who'd survived similar situations flew in from around the country to show support. Marcus's defense team tried everything. Claimed I'd agreed to the arrangement, that it was elaborate role-play gone wrong. Suggested I'd been mentally ill and he was protecting me from myself. Pointed to the fake medical records as evidence of my instability. The jury didn't buy any of it. 12 people who took less than 3 hours to convict on all charges. The financial crimes trial was separate and equally damaging. Whitmore and Associates faced federal investigation, eventually paying $400 million in fines and restitution. Marcus's clients sued him individually, his personal assets frozen and liquidated. The house, our house, was awarded to me in the civil trial, along with $28 million in damages, every penny he had and would ever earn. My book deal came through Simon & Schuster, a $2 million advance for my memoir titled Basement. The ghostwriter they assigned was brilliant, helping me shape 2 years of horror into something that could help other women recognize the signs of escalating control. The book toured for 6 months, bestseller status for 42 weeks, translated into 15 languages. Netflix bought the documentary rights for $3 million. The director and Oscar winner, who'd specialized in true crime, spent months interviewing everyone involved. Marcus's parents, who admitted they'd always known something was wrong with their son. My colleagues, who described the competent professional who'd simply vanished. Even Natalie participated, trying to reclaim her own narrative from the tabloids that painted her as a home-wrecking villain rather than another victim. The speaking engagements started small local women's shelters and community centers. Then universities, conferences, congressional hearings about domestic violence legislation. I testified before Senate committees, my voice steady as I described being erased from existence while living under my own kitchen. 3 states passed versions of Chelsea's law making financial abuse during imprisonment, a separate felony with mandatory minimums. Marcus was sentenced to 35 years without possibility of parole. I attended every day of his sentencing hearing, sitting in the front row where he had to see me. When the judge read the verdict, Marcus looked at me with tears streaming down his face, mouthing the words, "I'm sorry," over and over. I smiled. Not a forgiving smile, but the expression of someone watching justice being served cold and deliberate. I kept the house but gutted it completely. Every wall, every floor, every reminder of what happened there demolished and rebuilt. The basement became a workshop where I learned pottery, something about creating beauty from raw clay, helping me rebuild myself. The kitchen where Natalie had cooked became a sunny breakfast room where I hosted Sunday brunches for other survivors. Therapy was twice weekly for the first year, then weekly, then monthly, as I learned to exist in space again. EMDR for the trauma flashbacks, cognitive behavioral therapy for the anxiety, group sessions with other women who'd been imprisoned by partners. Some had been locked in bedrooms, others in sheds or storage units. We called ourselves the Underground, a dark joke about our shared experiences. Dating seemed impossible until I met Thomas at a conference about architectural accessibility. He was designing safe houses for domestic violence survivors, incorporating security features that empowered rather than imprisoned. Our first date lasted 7 hours talking about everything except my past, until the very end when I told him exactly who I was. He didn't run. Instead, he asked how he could design spaces where I'd feel safe but never trapped. 2 years after my rescue, almost 4 years after Marcus first locked that door, I stood in a courtroom again. This time testifying in Natalie's custody hearing, supporting her bid for sole custody of James. I told the judge that children shouldn't grow up visiting their father in prison, that Natalie had shown courage in helping secure my freedom, that she deserved a chance to raise her son away from Marcus's shadow. The trust fund I established for James would pay for his education therapy, whatever he needed to grow up whole despite his father's crimes. I'd never be his stepmother, but I could ensure he had opportunities Marcus had stolen from so many others. Gloria and I managed it together, 2 women who'd found unexpected friendship in the aftermath of unfathomable cruelty. Marcus writes me letters from prison that I return unopened. His lawyer says he wants to apologize properly to explain his mental state to seek forgiveness I'll never grant. I heard from a guard that he keeps my photo in his cell, the one from our wedding where I'm laughing at something off camera. He stares at it for hours, they say, trying to understand how he destroyed something he claimed to love. The money from the settlement book and documentary went partially to establishing the Chelsea Foundation, providing legal resources for women whose partners had financially abused them during relationships. We've helped 300 women reclaim their identities, recover stolen assets, rebuild credit, destroyed by vengeful exes. Every victory feels like another lock breaking on another basement door. I still have nightmares. Still check locks obsessively. Still feel my heart race when I hear footsteps above me in buildings. Recovery isn't linear, isn't complete, might never be finished. But every morning, I wake up in my own bed, make coffee in my own kitchen, choose my own clothes, and walk out my own front door. These simple freedoms that most people never think about are my daily miracles. Thomas proposed last month at sunrise on Montauk Point. The ring was his grandmother's simple and elegant nothing like the massive diamond Marcus had given me as a display of wealth. I said yes immediately, then spent an hour explaining all the ways my trauma might complicate our future. Thomas listened, held my hand, and promised we'd face whatever came together. The wedding will be small, just family and close friends in my parents' backyard. No massive reception, no society pages, no performance of perfect love for strangers to admire. Just real promises between 2 people who understand that love isn't possession. Marriage isn't ownership, and trust, once broken, must be earned in tiny increments over years. Looking back now, 4 years since the SWAT team shattered that reinforced door, I understand something fundamental about survival and revenge. Marcus thought he was burying me, hiding his crime under concrete and soundproofing. He never realized that every day he kept me prisoner, I was gathering strength, documenting evidence, preparing for the moment when his carefully constructed life would collapse entirely. He took 2 years from me, 730 days of sunlight, freedom, human connection. But in those stolen years, I learned something valuable about myself. I am not breakable. Even stripped of everything, locked in darkness, erased from the world, I remained unbroken at my core. That knowledge is worth more than any settlement, any justice, any revenge. The woman who walked out of that basement was not the same one who'd been drugged and dragged into it. Chelsea, the marketing director, the perfect wife, the one who trusted blindly and loved completely, she did die in that prison. But what emerged was someone harder, smarter, more ruthless when necessary. Someone who could smile at her torturer's sentencing and feel nothing but satisfaction. My therapist says holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. But she's never been locked in a basement while someone else lived your life above you. Some anger is fuel. Some rage is righteous. Some revenge is simply justice wearing work clothes instead of formal robes. The other survivors I've met through the foundation often ask how I stayed sane, how I kept hope when everything seemed hopeless. The truth is, I didn't stay entirely sane. Parts of my mind fractured and reformed into something useful for survival. And hope wasn't what kept me alive. Spite did. Pure crystallized determination that Marcus would not win, would not erase me, would not get away with attempted soul murder. Every woman who contacts the foundation starts with the same story. He seemed perfect at first. The control came gradually. The isolation felt like love. The financial abuse looked like caretaking. By the time they realized the trap, the door was already locked, literally or figuratively. We teach them to document everything, trust their instincts, plan carefully, and when the moment comes, destroy their abusers completely within the law. Marcus's mother visited me last week, first time since the trial. She's aged 20 years and 4, her husband dead from a heart attack that she blames on the shame. She wanted me to know she'd removed Marcus from her will, donated his childhood belongings to charity, burned every photo of him from family albums. She asked if I could ever forgive her for raising a monster. I told her monsters aren't born, they're enabled by people who mistake cruelty for strength. Natalie and I have a strange relationship now. Not friendship exactly, but a mutual understanding born from shared trauma. She sends me photos of James, sometimes this beautiful boy who looks nothing like his father, all Natalie's soft features and gentle temperament. She's in therapy too, working through the guilt of being manipulated into complicity. I testified at her nursing license hearing, helping her keep the career she'd built before Marcus destroyed her life too. The house where it happened stands renovated, now unrecognizable from its former self. The basement is filled with light skylights cut through where darkness once reigned. Sometimes I go down there to work on pottery, my hands covered in clay, creating something beautiful in the space where I was meant to disappear. It feels like the ultimate victory, transforming a tomb into a studio. Some people question why I kept the house at all, why not sell it and move somewhere without memories. But running would feel like Marcus still had power over me, could still dictate where I could and couldn't exist. Instead, I overwrote every horrible memory with better ones. Birthday parties in the backyard where SWAT teams once stood. Dinner parties in the kitchen where Natalie once cried. Love made in the bedroom where surveillance cameras once watched. Thomas moved in last month after our quiet wedding, bringing nothing but clothes and his architectural drawings. He's designing an addition, a greenhouse, where I can grow things year-round, watch life flourish even in winter. Sometimes I catch him checking the basement door, making sure it opens from both sides, no locks anywhere. He understands trauma in ways that don't require explanation. The nightmares are less frequent now, but still visit occasionally. Always the same theme, trying to scream, but no sound coming out, trying to run, but my legs won't move, trying to call for help, but no one believes me. I wake gasping, Thomas already awake beside me, waiting until I remember where I am when I am that I'm free. He never asks what I dreamed. He knows. My work with the foundation has revealed how common my story actually is. Not always basements, but bedrooms, attic sheds, cabins, and remote locations. Women disappeared from their own lives, while their captors explain away their absence with elaborate lies. We've helped reunite 17 women with their families, provided legal support for 93 prosecutions, changed laws in 12 states. Each victory is personal. The Chelsea Foundation's biggest success came last month. Federal legislation passed making financial identity theft during domestic abuse a specific felony with a 10-year minimum sentence. The signing ceremony was held in the Rose Garden, the president calling me a survivor who'd turned trauma into transformation. Marcus watched from his prison cell. I heard the guards saying he didn't eat for 3 days afterward. People sometimes ask if I ever think about what my life would have been without those 2 years. The career trajectory interrupted the children I might have had the simpler happiness of a life untraumatized. But that thinking leads nowhere useful. This is my life. These are my scars, and I've built something meaningful from the wreckage Marcus created. His letters keep coming forwarded through lawyers now since I won't accept direct contact. The prison psychiatrist diagnosed him with narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial traits, as if naming his pathology somehow explains or excuses it. He's found religion apparently claims God has shown him the magnitude of his sins. I hope his newfound faith brings him nothing but awareness of what he's lost. The parole board will never see me advocate for his release. In 28 years, when his first hearing comes, I'll be 60, and I'll sit in that room and read from my journal, reminding them of every single day he stole, every moment of torture he inflicted, every life he destroyed in his pursuit of a new beginning built on my erasure. The surprising thing about survival is how ordinary it becomes. You wake up, make breakfast, go to work, come home, make dinner, go to bed. The extraordinary trauma that once defined everything becomes just another part of your history, like a bad job or failed relationship. It never fully leaves, but it stops being the main character in your story. I'm pregnant now, something Thomas and I planned carefully with my therapist's guidance. The ultrasound, showing a healthy girl who'll never know her mother was once locked in a basement, though she'll grow up understanding that women can survive anything, can rebuild from nothing, can transform victimhood into victory. She'll be born into a world where her mother changed laws, saved lives, and refused to let a man's cruelty be the end of her story. Gloria threw the baby shower last week, a small gathering of women who've become my chosen family. Survivors from the foundation, lawyers who fought for me, therapists who helped me heal, journalists who told my story truthfully. Natalie was there with James, teaching him to be gentle with baby gifts. No one mentioned the other shower, the one I heard through the ceiling while dying below. This one was about life, not performance. As I write this 4 years and 3 months after my rescue, Marcus has served less than 2 years of his 35-year sentence. He has 33 more years to think about the 2 he stole from me. The math isn't equal, but justice rarely is. What matters is that he's in a cage now, monitored, constantly fed on someone else's schedule, his freedom entirely in others' hands. He's living a version of what he inflicted, and I hope the irony burns him daily. The foundation received a donation last week from an anonymous source, $5 million, with a note saying it was from someone who should have looked for me harder. I suspect it's from one of Marcus's partners at Whitmore, guilty about missing the signs or profiting from his crimes. We'll use it to build safe houses, places where women can hide, while building legal cases against their abusers. Thomas and I are designing the first safe house together, every detail considered through the lens of trauma-informed architecture. Doors that lock from inside only. Windows that can't be sealed. Multiple exits from every room. Basement spaces filled with natural light. Gardens where women can grow things, watching life flourish despite everything trying to kill it. We're calling it the Phoenix House because resurrection is possible, just not in the form you existed before. My mother calls every morning at 7:30, just to hear my voice to confirm I'm still here, still free. My father has taken up woodworking, building furniture for the baby's room, each piece sturdy enough to last generations. Emma visits monthly from California, still protective, still angry at everyone who failed to find me. My family was traumatized too, in ways we're only beginning to understand. The baby kicks now, strong movements that remind me my body belongs to me again, creates life instead of just surviving. Thomas talks to her through my belly. Tells her about the strong women in her family, the grandmother who investigated until she found the truth, the aunt who never stopped searching, the mother who survived the impossible. She'll grow up surrounded by women who know their worth, can't be stolen, only temporarily hidden. Sometimes I drive past Whitmore and Associates, the building where Marcus was arrested, where his carefully constructed life finally collapsed. They've renamed it New Management, trying to distance themselves from the scandal. But everyone knows what happened there, how they enabled a monster through willful blindness. Their stock never recovered. Good. Marcus's father died last year, his obituary mentioning only his other son, the doctor who saves lives, instead of destroying them. Being erased from your family's history is a special kind of death one Marcus gets to experience while still breathing. His brother testified at the trial about childhood signs they'd all ignored the pets that disappeared. The girlfriends who left suddenly, the patterns everyone dismissed as Marcus being Marcus. I keep one photo from before tucked in my jewelry box next to my grandmother's pearls, Marcus never found to pawn. It's from my 30th birthday, 2 years before everything changed. I'm laughing at something off camera, genuinely happy, unaware of what was coming. I keep it to remind myself that joy existed before trauma and therefore can exist after it. The woman in that photo wouldn't recognize me now. Harder, scarier, less trusting, but somehow more open to real love. She thought she needed Marcus's approval, his money, his version of success. This version of me needs nothing from anyone, chooses everything deliberately, loves with eyes wide open to potential darkness, but choosing light anyway. Next week marks the 5th anniversary of when Marcus first hired Natalie, set his plan in motion, began building my prison while sleeping beside me. I'll spend it at the foundation working with women who are just beginning their journeys from victim to survivor to whatever comes after. We don't call ourselves thrivers or warriors or any of those hollow inspirational terms. We're just women who refuse to stay buried. The ending Marcus planned for me was death, literal or spiritual, erased either way. The ending I wrote for him is worse, living with the knowledge that I survived, thrived, used his crimes as foundation for changing laws, saving lives, building something beautiful from the ugliness he created. Every morning he wakes in a cell is a morning I wake free. That's the revenge that actually matters. Who would have thought that 2 years in a basement would teach me more about strength than 30 years of freedom ever did? Who could have predicted that the woman who emerged would be capable of destroying a man so completely that his own mother disowned him? Who knew that surviving the worst thing imaginable would make everything else feel possible? The truth is, Marcus did kill someone in that basement. The woman who trusted too easily, loved too blindly, ignored red flags, wrapped in expensive gifts. She died somewhere between months 6 and 12, when the last hope of random rescue faded. But what rose from her death was something Marcus never expected. Someone who could wait, plan, document, and destroy with the patience of a spider and the memory of an elephant. My therapist says I've integrated the trauma remarkably well, that my functionality exceeds most survivors of prolonged captivity. What she doesn't understand is that functionality isn't healing, it's armor. The real healing happens in moments she doesn't see. When I can shower with the door unlocked. When I can sleep without checking exits. When I can love Thomas without wondering what basement he might be building. This story. These 10,000 words, they're not even half of what happened during those 2 years. The daily degradations, small cruelties, psychological tortures that don't translate into narrative. The way time stopped meaning anything. The hallucinations from isolation. The conversations with myself that kept me tethered to sanity's edge. The prayers to a God I wasn't sure existed but needed to believe might be listening. But you don't need every detail to understand the truth. Evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it wears a $10,000 suit and speaks at charity galas. Sometimes it sleeps beside you for years, memorizing your weaknesses, planning your destruction. Sometimes it loves you in its own twisted way, loving the idea of you more than your actual existence. What happened to me could happen to anyone. That's not a warning meant to frighten, but to awaken. Document everything suspicious. Trust your instincts about control escalating. Build networks that will look for you if you disappear. Don't let love make you stupid. And if the worst happens, if you find yourself in your own version of a basement, remember that survival is the first victory and revenge, properly executed, is the final one. Thank you for listening to my story. If you or someone you know is experiencing controlling behavior from a partner, please reach out for help before it escalates. What questions do you have about recognizing the warning signs of domestic imprisonment? Please comment below, and don't forget to like this video if it opened your eyes to dangers hiding in plain sight. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more survivor stories that need to be heard, And please share this with anyone who might need to hear that survival is possible, justice is achievable, and sometimes the person who locks you in a basement ends up in a much worse prison than the one they built for you. Stay safe, stay aware, and remember that your life belongs to you and no one else.